I'm John Quick, and over the years, I've had the privilege of hosting over 400 podcast episodes, most recently, the United States of Small Business. Through all those conversations, one thing has become clear. People are more than just what you read about them in the headlines. That's why I'm launching Stories Worth Hearing, a new series that dives into the lives behind the headlines. These raw, real conversations with people whose stories deserves more than a soundbite, no script, no spin, just the truth behind their journey. And today's guest is a perfect example of just that. Oz Pearlman is one of the most captivating mentalists in the world. He amazed millions on America's Got Talent, ESPN, NBC, but recently he went viral for doing what most of us thought was impossible. He guessed Joe Rogan's ATM PIN on air. Some have even called him the most interesting guest Joe Rogan has ever had. And if you've seen the show, you know that's saying something. But Oz's story goes far beyond mentalists. From Wall Street career to becoming a world-class performer and an ultra-endurance athlete, his journey is all about belief, hustle, and taking big risks. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Oz, I appreciate you joining me. You know, one of the things that that made me stumble upon kind of you and start to look into your story and was that a lot of my friends saw you on Joe Rogan podcast, and they said that your episode was probably the most intriguing and interesting episode they've ever seen on Joe Rogan, which is pretty nuts because that's the biggest podcast in the entire world. It's consumed by more people than any news show, CNN, Fox News, all those kind of things combined. So what was it like being on Joe Rogan? Everybody's seen that ATM PIN clip. Talk to me a little bit about how what the experience was like.
First off, I love hearing that because, when you do it, it's one thing, but you don't really, there's YouTube comments, but real life, like what people talk about and say, that network of people telling you, like, you got to listen to this episode. I love that. I've been on and off a listener of his for almost a decade. So I've studied the show, and it wasn't by happenstance that I got on there. I've been trying for years. For years, I've been working it, different angles, different people, wheeling and dealing behind the scenes. So I came into that show with what I would describe as literally years of preparation as to what I thought I would be doing, and all different plans, plan A, plan B. It's almost like an Ocean's 11 type caper where I can even tell you that I'm already set up for things that I'm going to do when I go back on Rogan. So, before I left the room, my goal was to punch my ticket to get back on for another appearance. And I've already got thoughts of how to go bigger and better the next time. It was an incredible experience. It's incredibly challenging. It's kind of like the Super Bowl for what I do, but even harder than the Super Bowl because there's no controlling the environment. It's Joe's show. Joe does what he wants. Joe is not, he's the biggest skeptic in the world. So you're not going to get anything like over on him. When people are saying, I think the reason that ATM PIN code hit people so hard is because everyone knows. Nobody in the world goes, that's fake. Some people say, oh, it's got to be fake with these football players. Joe Rogan's not faking it for anyone, not for me, not for presidents, not for anyone. And the genuine distress and light anger in his eyes conveyed more than any words could say. Like, he was really startled and kind of freaked out and started to think, like, how did you do that? Is this nefarious? Is this not? And by the end, I think I really made him somewhat of a believer, whereby he got a sense for what I'm capable of doing.
Yeah, I watch Joe Rogan pretty regularly. I've only seen him kind of like uncomfortable in two clips. One was the guy talking about mushrooms, say he couldn't he couldn't talk about mushrooms anymore, or he might get clipped. And the second one was the ATM pin. So let's take me back to kind of where this all started. I'd love to hear the story of what first got you started in mentalism and magic. What drew you to it? It's you're at the top of the game now, but I'm sure that it took years and years and years and years of work. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, unfortunately, it always does, right? It never happens overnight, even when it looks like overnight success. I started as a magician. I started as a teenager. That's where I kind of caught the bug. That's usually the term is most people see a magician in some sort of environment. For me, it happened to be on a cruise ship, which was, we did that for my 13th birthday. That was a huge party. in lieu of like I had a bar mitzvah and we didn't have a party like most people do. Instead, me and my kind of grandma and my parents went on a cruise ship with my sisters, saw a magician, and was blown away, absolutely blown away. And then I started, whereas most people have a passing interest, they might get a magic kit, they might, do a couple tricks and then it collects dust in a drawer. I was obsessed. So for me, it didn't end there. It continued and it became a self-fulfilling thing where I wanted to keep learning more. And in order for me to do that, I didn't really have the financial means, nor did my parents. My parents had divorced right around then. So this was kind of one of those things that filled the void for me of, I would say in hindsight, not dealing with the trauma and tumultuous nature of my family was I could just zone in and 110% focus on magic and learning magic tricks and also get that dopamine hit of seeing people react and just kind of love what I'm doing, which is a common theme and thread with a lot of comedians, a lot of magicians and performers is there's some of that childhood of like you're filling in darker times by making it happy. And I've seen that with a lot of my friends who happen to be comedians and magicians and mentalists. Um, and honestly, that's what I started doing. And I started performing semi-professionally in order to pay for more tricks. So in order for me to get more stuff and do more stuff, I was doing shows. And that was honestly my hustle throughout high school and college as I kind of got better and better, started doing restaurants, kids' birthday parties, advancing to adult parties, and then continuing on. I actually went to college, got a degree in electrical engineering, worked on Wall Street, and you fast forward about 10 years past me getting into magic is when I quit my day job and became a full-time performer.
So tell me a little bit about that moment in time where, you have an electrical engineering degree, you're on Wall Street. By all means, by all worldly accounts, that's already a successful career. It's at that there has to be some moment where you're like, I'm going to now do my dream or side hustle full time and leave kind of the Wall Street job in the rear. Tell me about what that moment looked like for you.
So it's always funny because in hindsight, it always seems like that was the moment I knew, like that you always feel like in hindsight things are perfect. But at the moment, it was a big leap of faith. I was, I had a cushy job, I had a steady paycheck, all things that I don't take for granted and that, God bless, a lot of people don't have. But I feel like at my core, I did not think this was my calling in life, that this was where I would advance. And if you asked me kind of that question of look yourself in the mirror and is it, can you see yourself doing this in 20 years? What is your automatic answer? My automatic answer was no. That's not where I want to be. But reality sometimes isn't quite the same thing as dreams. So I set myself up for success. It was a lot of the things I did in the years leading up, saving money, building a network. I wrote a book. It's coming out this year, and it really shows you how I went from an idea that became a passion, that became a profession, that became, and now a major success. But it was all those little steps along the way where I kind of built up enough business where I said, could I do this? And there were a few moments there where I kind of started to believe in myself that I'm going to give it a shot. And eventually I ended up quitting. There was a moment where I performed for the CFO of the company because I worked for Merrill Lynch. And what happened during this moment is he had no idea that I worked for the company. I was hired as a performer. He thought I was a professional magician. But the event planners within the company all knew me because I did the happy hours. You know what I mean? I networked within the company. And it's a very precise moment that I'll never forget where I turned $1 bills into hundreds. And he starts laughing. And, this is Wall Street. They want to make money. He goes, oh, we got to have you working here. And everyone's with him laughing. Like 5 or 6 guys are all laughing. And I go, I do work here, sir. And he thought I was just joking. He thought it was like part of the riff. And he goes, oh, what do you mean? And I go, no, seriously. Like I got serious all of a sudden. I broke the fourth wall. And I go, I work in global technology services at 95 Green Street. And so it clicked in his mind, like this guy's not just joking. And I knew too many acronyms of the company. He goes, he's Australian. He goes, what the hell are you doing working here, mate? And it was for him a passing comment. And again, I haven't met him. It's funny, James Gorman in many, many years. But I doubt he would ever remember. But it's those moments that somebody says the right words in the right place at the right time. It's like puzzle pieces that connect. And I just kind of said to myself, what am I doing working here? It was more existential and deep. And that was kind of where I decided I'm going to quit. I'm going to go for this. And, lengthy story, but that was just about 20 years ago in 2005. And this is all the stuff that's built up and happened since.
That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit, pivot and talk a little bit about this book that's coming out. I'd love to hear a little bit of background from it. I think it's up for pre-sale. Wherever this lands, we'll put a link to the book. talk to me a little bit about why you wrote the book and what folks could expect if they take a look at it.
Absolutely. So I think for so many years, I always get asked the same question at the end of every show. How do you do it? Right? That is the question people ask. And after a while, I've dissected the fact that I don't think people actually want to know how I do it because what I have is a very finite skill set that I'm using primarily for the purpose of entertainment, which is what
Mhm.
looks like reading people's minds. But I don't read minds. I am not supernatural. I am not psychic. I don't claim to have any powers that you don't have. Rather, what I do is read people, which all of us are capable of doing, and we do at certain degrees. Just most of us haven't honed that skill. The same way a pianist might know a tune or two, but you might not make it to Carnegie Hall. So my book is what it does is shows you how to apply the principles of mentalism, but instead of for the form of entertainment to your life, at home, at work, in your relationships, and utilize my skills. So rather than being a mentalist, which there are lots of books if you want to learn to be a mentalist, there are videos. Good luck. It's a lot of work and it's years and years. I wanted you to start to learn how to think like a mentalist and give you kind of simple strategies and tools that you can use and pick up quickly. Like nobody wants to read a book and spend years and years. Frankly, that's why there's not that many mentalists. You want to learn something in 10 minutes and still be using it in 10 years. And that was what the book is all about, is how to find those life hacks that you can use to supercharge your memory. That's a huge one. How to win people over and influence them. Like my Bible from 2 decades ago is How to Win Friends and Influence
Mm,
People by Dale Carnegie,
yeah.
which is just tried and true tactics of how to like it says, win people over, how to get them to like you. Because if they like you, they want to do business with you, they want to be friends with you, and they want to be around you. All of those things are very important, whether you're trying to build relationships or make money. And so that's really what the book is all about. And it dives into some of my fun stories, kind of crazy things with celebrities, things I've done, kind of getting behind the curtain of what I've done, but then teaching. Every chapter at the end, takeaways. Here's what you're going to learn. Here's what you're going to do.
That's awesome. So along your journey, did you have somebody that kind of saw your potential, maybe was a hero in your life, somebody that was super inspirational? Um, Tell me who that person was and maybe why they were a hero in your life.
So I'm a huge believer in mentors, and that's one chapter of the book is how to find those people where it's always very overwhelming and daunting when you have an idea, a concept, and you want to see yourself as a success, and you're like, I don't know all the steps. How do I get there? Find someone who's what you want to be 5 years and 10 years from now, and find a way for them to open up to you. So for me, I got very lucky when I was a teenager. I met a guy, his name is Bruce Kessler. Where what he was kind of my magic mentor for a few years, where we randomly saw each other at a Borders bookstore. RIP doesn't even exist anymore. And I would always have cards in my hands. From age 13 to 18, you literally could not find me without cards. You ready for this, John? Quick. I found waterproof cards and I would practice in the shower. That's a true psycho. Waterproof cards in the shower. You talk about dedication, that's dedication. And so I would always be practicing because every minute of the day, and even at school, I would always have a coin in my hand to practice palming and all these different moves that are about muscle memory. The more you practice, the more, just like Tiger Woods has swung a club 20 million times, I've done a lot of card moves over and over and over, which has helped me with mentalism. You wouldn't think it, but sleight of hand helps with sleight of mind. And so I met this mentor, and long story short, he just opened my eyes to all these things where I was a little more of a small town boy. I grew up in Wisconsin and Michigan, and my eyes weren't open to all these other things. The same way somebody, shows you Led Zeppelin,
Mhm.
showing my age, and you suddenly learn all these different music and rock and things you didn't know about. It's kind of like a big brother vibe that I didn't have. And he showed me how to start learning what I would describe as how to view magic from the view of the audience rather than the performer. At the time, I just wanted to buy tricks at the store and do them. I wasn't thinking about how's the audience experiencing what I'm doing? What's the story they're going to tell to the next person about me? Because that's really the secret sauce of what I do. It's what's the memory and what's the story you tell others.
That's great. Do you have a, I'm sure you've done thousands of performances. Do you have one or two that have been your favorite or stick out?
Yeah.
And why do those kind of stick out or become your favorites?
There's few that have sentimental value. There's one where my oldest son last summer I did a show at in West Hampton Beach Performing Arts Center, and I did a bit where my 8-year-old son came on stage, but nobody knew that he was my son, and it was a very funny. It's a comedy bit, and it ends in the culmination of finding out this is my son. It was kind of like a mind reading bit. Nobody knew, and at the end, I kind of go, I don't want to spoil it in case somebody sees it in the future, but it was so funny, and watching him shine and watching the look on his face with 500 people was just, it's next level. Like it's one thing for me as a performer, but to see him and how much he took it in and how much he'll remember that, I think, for the rest of his life, took it to another level entirely. The finale of America's Got Talent is one that stays with me because of the scope, the scale. It was so risky. It hung by a knife's edge as to going completely wrong. And that's not me trying to BS you. I'm serious. Like I could watch that and I get sweaty palms if I watch it on YouTube because I remember the experience. And I remember the fact that there's 15 or 16 million people watching live. The clock doesn't stop if you mess up. And the producers know how everything works. So it's very important. It's the only situation where the emperor have no clothing because in everything else I do, nobody knows how it works. Joe Rogan has no idea how I did what I did to him. TV
Yeah.
producers on ESPN don't know how I'm doing this. But AGT is different because they have people on staff like me. Do you understand what I mean? So
Yeah.
we work together in ideating and making it the best thing on TV because they have such a good section of magicians and mentalists. So somebody like me, when I told them the idea, goes, but that can go wrong, like this way, and this way. That's very risky. And I go, yeah. And they go, you're gonna do that? And I go, yeah. And they go, but what if it goes wrong? And I go, well, no risk, no reward, right? I'm not doing singles in baseball. I do grand slam walk-off home runs. And that's been what's elevated me each time and level jumped is people can tell when you play it safe. They can tell when you do things that are risky, you can feel it. You feel the sweaty palms. You feel the hair rise on your neck. There's an element of danger. For me, it's not that I'm going to die, but that it will very well go wrong. And so for that one, when it worked, and it was the culmination of all this like adrenaline and that show again, I don't know if you ever watched it, but when you make it to the later rounds you have less time to plan the next round, so the highs and the lows are just so vast where you make it you get on a Wednesday night, you get voted in, and on a Thursday morning you've had the greatest night of your life. They go, what are you going to do next Tuesday? It's better. And you're like, oh, I don't know. And so those next 48 hours are just insanity. And that's where I shine best under pressure.
Nice. One of the things that's also intriguing to me that you do is these kind of ultra endurance races. Talk to me a little bit about the kind of the connection between doing things of the physical feat and the mental feat and how those kind of play in and tie together.
So the running serves a few purposes for me. I do what's called ultra marathons. So for those some people who are not sure what is that, a marathon is 26.2 miles, and ultra marathon is typically anything longer, but most people would quantify it as things that are 100 miles or more, and that means 100 miles running in a row. So that's typically nonstop. I've run up to 153 miles in one go. Crazy, I know. I enjoy it for two reasons. One is I enjoy it because I hate it. So I think there's a real power in doing stuff that in the moment is suffering you don't want to do, you overcome it, and then it strengthens you. It's just like you got to rip muscle to grow it back stronger. And that works mentally because for a lot of these races that I've done, there are people out there that are slower than me, that are older than me, that are every quantifiable and objective measure. They should not finish they shouldn't beat me. They shouldn't finish if I didn't finish, but yet they do. And it's because it's mental. It's mental. Like if somebody told you, John, that you had to run right now 50 miles to save one of your children's lives, you would do everything in your power. You would crawl on your knees, bleeding stumps. You would make it happen. Do you understand? Your mind is
Yeah.
capable of so much more than what your body thinks. And I think that that's where I push myself to an edge. And that level of mental acuity, like attuning and focusing my mind in the runs, has helped me so much in my career and also in when you're reading body language and you have to be calm under pressure, which I have to do for what I do to work. It's kind of similar. I mentioned on Rogan, like a sniper, where when things aren't going right, I have to be in control for it to work. And I have to dig myself out of a hole in a lot of instances. And sometimes on very big stages with millions of people watching, I have to be calm. And the running gets me calm. My lowered heart rate, my ability to just like cancel out all the noise and focus in the moment. I think that's something that being an athlete really helps tremendously because of the mind-body connection.
I like that. In today's day and age, um, the younger crowd wants kind of instant gratification. They want to be the CEO of a company day two on the job. I heard that you had hand cut your own business cards at 14,
Yeah.
and I think that's so cool. Talk to me a little bit about, for the folks listening in that are like they have a dream and a goal, and they're faced with a kind of world today that says they deserve it on day one of trying. Talk to me a little bit about how that looked differently for you growing up, and kind of, we didn't have Facebook and Instagram influencers. We had to go, door by door or face to face, and it wasn't like what it is now. But talk to me a little bit more about that hustle that you had when you were younger, and maybe speak to the folks listening in that have a dream and a goal in their own life, but maybe don't really know what hustle and grind looks like.
Absolutely. So honestly, not to like overly self-promote, but like the book is exactly this question that you asked me. This is the playbook where, yes, I'm going to teach you to read people, but it shows you the come up story. Because for every person who's successful, there were all these failures along the way and little steps that they learned from. And in a perfect world, you learn those failures early so you can, you don't have to make them. You don't have to make those mistakes if you can't avoid them. And a lot of it is called, like for me, is stacking the deck in your favor. In a magician's tricks, a lot of time what you don't realize is they stack the deck before they did the trick and you didn't even realize it. And what you have to do is find ways in life to stack the deck in your favor and to create quantifiable goals. So I think for so many of us, we have this idea where, let's say you're in a job you don't like and you're not making enough money and there's all different things. You need to boil it down and distill it. What is it that you really want? Because a lot of the time, those stories we tell ourselves are not what we really want. You say, I want more money. I go, well, what does that mean to you? Because a lot of people say that to me. And I remember myself when I was a magician coming up and I saw guys who were more successful than me. And I'm like, oh man, I want to get paid that much for a gig and I want to do this. Yes, but what is it that you really want? Are you looking for freedom? Is it something you want to buy? Is it the money? Like there's all different things that when you dissect in your own mind, read your own mind and figure out what it is you want, it gets you fast track to how to get there. And again, when you say this, I set up all these things where I didn't have, my parents weren't paying for my college. Great example. They got divorced, they moved away, they moved out of the country. I was my own adult. At the time, I was pretty mad. All my friends go on vacation with their parents. They got books and school paid for. They're not worrying about how to pay rent like I am and how to get food. But in hindsight, it was the biggest silver lining ever because it forced my hand. It forced me to jump in the deep end. I started a business. I started a business installing and removing boat docks. Couldn't be more different than mentalism. But I saw a need where I had a friend who lived on a lake. Shout out to my buddy Mark Waksberg. His parents hated doing it. Nobody wants to do this. For those who know on lakes, the water, the first day gets warm in April. Everybody wants their boat back in the water. If it's like a lake that freezes over, you know this if you're in Alaska. And so somebody's got to get in the water and install them. Miserable work. It's freezing cold. And we would do this for his family because we were told to, but we noticed people said, hey, can you do it for us? Can you do it for us? We can't get a guy to do it. And we realized how much we could charge, how we could set up a business. And then we started to understand just the mindset of business is how do we do this effectively? How do we market ourselves? In my case, I went to the University of Michigan. I was a Wolverine. He went to Michigan State, was a Spartan. So we leaned into humor, which is we called our company Wolverine Spartan Boat Dock. Why did we do this? Because about 98% of people that we would market to had a connection, either themselves, their spouse, or someone in their family went to one of those two schools because we lived in Michigan. So when we would get to the house, people would always bust our chops because they cheered for one of the two teams and goes, which one of you is the Wolverine? And they go, oh, I'm only doing business with him. Screw this guy. I'm like, I know, get rid of this guy. And we already had rapport. That's how to think like a mentalist. Understand how to win people over the moment you meet them, right? How to overcome those little moments of resistance. And so again, we didn't have that from day one. We built that business over the course of 3 summers. I saved my money. Instead of going on vacation, instead of buying all this stuff, I had a used Ford Tempo that I bought myself for super cheap. And I pocketed away all that money so that it sounds like at the moment, well, you left your job, you did this. No, no, no. I spent 10 years setting myself up for success so that the moment that CFO said to me, what are you doing working here, mate? I had enough money and a little bit of a runway to give myself that chance, right? You want to win the lottery, buy a lottery ticket. It's not going to fall down from the sky. So there's all these things that you can do that you're not doing right now. I guarantee you, if I looked at you, I look at your screen time. You've been on the phone 6 hours today. Why don't we apply 1 hour of that to learning something on YouTube or to honing a skill that you already have and converting it into something that maybe makes you money or maybe makes you connections or maybe makes you something. I don't know what it is, but there's so many ways nowadays to monetize what you enjoy.
Yeah, that's so true. My guess is you're getting, more and more famous every month, probably getting pulled in 8 different directions. Do you ever miss this simplicity of, what it was like 20 years ago, showing up and doing a show to 5 people or whatever? Do you ever miss those early days?
I find other creative. So for me right now, what really excites me, doing shows is very fun. I don't want to by any means, like I call it more of what my operational is. I do events. So I do a lot of
Yeah.
corporate events, private parties. And while those are very fun and very fulfilling, that's kind of like a band that plays their greatest hits, if that makes sense.
Um,
But a lot of bands, when they get up there and they play songs from the new album, even though the fans don't know those songs, it's really fun for the band. So for me, when I go on TV, and what's been very unique and kind of like when you measure success and why the Rogan has done well and other things is because I'm constantly innovating. I am not playing the greatest hits. Even today, for example, I don't know when this is going to come out, but at the end of this month and in August is when I go do football season. I've done it the last 3 years, and I'm going to go to several football teams in the NFL and college football teams, some of the biggest ones you'll see. Even today, I just figured out a trick that I've never done before, came up with it this morning while out on a run for what I would describe as arguably two of the most famous football players in the world, knock on wood. And in about 3 weeks, I'm hoping to do it. And I came up with it today. And so that excites me. That kind of exactly what I said with America's Got Talent. When I'm shoved
yeah.
into a corner, the pressure is on. I tend to deliver. If you had told me 6 months ago, come up with it, I don't feel that anxious. Oh my God, I've got to get the, even for me, 3 weeks out is quite early. I did something last year for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills that I finished coming up with the trick during a 22-mile run that ended an hour before I did it. So an hour before I did it at mile 18, I'll never forget where I was in Pittsburgh. I'll never forget where I was on what road I was when I had a eureka. Oh my God, I've got it. Like there was one puzzle piece missing right, in one spot that was missing from the trick that put it all together. And I did it that day. And that's the funny thing about mentalism. Mentalism is not a magic trick. It's not practicing. It's reverse engineering the human mind. So most of my practice happens in my brain. It's all formulating thoughts and then executing them effectively and having all these backup plans.
That's great. I can't wait to watch those. I've seen a couple of your football ones. They're really awesome. And the whole team goes nuts. They freak out and all this kind of stuff. It's really cool to see those, real authentic reactions from folks as it's happening. I want to be mindful of your time, but any last minute thoughts here before we head off? The floor is yours. Take it
Sure.
away if you got any last minute thoughts.
Let me look at your questions. No, if you think we got enough, we got enough.
Nice. Yeah,
What
I
is the
think we did.
difference? I mean, I'm trying to give you some usable advice. Yeah, I don't know if you've got one or two last ones. I'll fire it off and call it a day. Is less memoir and more inspirational. So I hope people dig it.
Yeah, that's kind of my style. I guess one of my last thoughts or questions would be what's either next for you or what's kind of your ultimate dream as it relates to your career? What is it going to be that you look, when you're 85 or 90 sipping Mai Tais on the beach, what's going to be the thing that you can look back on and say, wow, that was awesome. That was a fun ride. What's the peak of that look like?
So I like to look forward more than backwards, which I've heard a story about Elton John. I just heard an interview with him where it's the same thing. He doesn't like rehashing because it feels like you just think about, oh, I've already had the greatest things behind me. And I like to find that middle ground of really reveling in the moment when I have an achievement. Like Joe Rogan, when I finished, when I walked out of his studio in Austin, Texas, I was glowing. There was a because I that was the culmination of years and years of wanting that, and it just went as well as I ever could have hoped and dreamed. And so it's that moment of enjoying it, but also thinking in my mind, how am I going to top this next? Right? It should be that healthy gauge of what do I do? And for me, I think the ultimate level of success outside of, raising kids, uh, family, juggling the balance of, life in general, but when it comes to career is I want to promote what mentalism is because it's a category that doesn't really exist until now. Yes, some people have heard of it here and there, but I think I'm bringing it more to the mainstream. I think through my work with sports, with movie stars, with musicians, with all of the biggest stars in the world, and that's hopefully my goal is this next year, you're going to see me with just more and more of the biggest stars in the world, seeing them act like kids, seeing them blown away and wowed and seeing kind of the power of the human mind. And now, especially with the book coming out, which is going to take it from me being more of an entertainer to me being more of a teacher and showing you how you can apply this to your life. And I think those two combined, I have a TED talk coming out. I have a profile on a big news show on TV. I can't really tell you which one, but you know what it's called. And just a lot of other very big things coming out in the next 4 months that I'm very excited to share. Kind of a new TV show that's also being produced as we speak. And so there's just a lot of things that I think are going to keep making that category shine where it helps not only me, but all the other mentalists. Because my hope is that in 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years, that if you were to walk up to somebody on the street and say to them, who's your favorite mentalist? Rather than right now, most people go to you, what's a mentalist? That's the answer
Yeah.
you get from 9 out of 10. I want 9 out of 10 people to say to you, you mean like O's the mentalist? That's what I want. So I want that household name category. And I want it not just about me, but defined the same way Google or Kleenex is. You're going to Google something, right?
Yeah.
That's what I want it to be. I want my name to be attached to this category because no one has that slot right now.
That's great. Oh, it's one thing that I think is the most inspirational for me as it relates to your story is, there's so much, turn on the news, there's so much negativity, right? I try to do the positive things in this world. And I think that pretty much everything that you've done, at least that I've seen in your career, you're trying to do something positive here in this world. And I think that that's honestly sometimes a path less traveled. And I think it's pretty admirable that you're uh, kind of committed to doing something that's going to make a positive difference in the world. So kudos to you. I appreciate you
Thank you.
joining me. Look forward to reading your book,